Do you have any advice for the average person who, because one of the challenges I encountered as a trainer was initially there were so many things I'd want people to change, right? They'd come to me and say they want to lose weight, and I'm like, okay, here's the list of all the things that we can do to maximize your results. And I quickly learned, I don't want to say quickly, it actually took me years to figure out that it just didn't work for most people because it was too much. It was too much all at once, and I had to kind of really focus on small changes and things that had a large impact in relationship to the time that it was taken to do them. And I had to learn how to become effective, essentially, in that sense, and just accept that most people are not going to be fitness fanatics. Do you have like real practical advice or tips for people along these lines for the average person, not the fitness fanatic, but somebody who's they go to the gym twice a week and they want to improve their health? Like, are there like easy or I don't want to say easy, but simple changes that can yield a good measurable change or response that they can do in their normal lives?
Yeah, 1,000,000%. I mean, that to me, I think with working with clients, or the whole function of writing the Align Method book was to provide all of the simple, tangible tips and tricks and kind of like subtle lifestyle shifts that we can make that it's almost like imperceptible, but they end up having massive impact. And so a big part of that would be like going back to the shape of your environment. If you have a space in your home where it does naturally make sense to go through the full up and down range of motion and get up and down off the ground, again, it feels almost dumb to talk about because it should. I mean, should's a dumb word too, but ideally it would have just already been happening. It never would have been taken away.
Right.
It's like suddenly a culture starts drinking a quarter of the amount of water that would be optimal for hydration. And then suddenly 80 years later, people are like, I think we need to drink a little bit more water. And it sounds like this wild idea, and so when you're going up and down through that full range of motion, fall risk is the number one leading reason for elderly needed assisted living. How many millions or billions of dollars is invested in elderly, needing support, because there's a risk of falling to the ground and not being able to get back up and, needing to be supported in that way. I mean, that's like, it's just so much even outside of the money, like just like the sovereignty and autonomy of our grandparents and our parents and eventually ourselves, like that doesn't need to happen. So just even that in and of itself, just like if that was the only thing that this conversation was about, I think that would be enough, and then from there going into saying, okay, another thing that's pretty relevant, especially right now, would be having full functional range of motion of your rib cage and, your lung capacity, being able to access that vital lung capacity. And if we are sitting, hunching over a lot, slouched over into a chair, it's not a good or bad moralistic thing. It just happens to cause those ribs to start to lose their potential to go through that full range of motion. Like each rib, when you breathe, ideally it should move like the handle of a bucket. So inhalation, it's coming up, exhalation is coming down, inhalation is coming up, and it's going through this full range of motion. If we're continually stuck in one range, those intercostal muscles aren't able to function optimally. Those ribs are not able to go through that full range of motion. There's going to be a limitation in your ability to breathe. And so something really simple that we could do to change that relationship would just be get our freaking hands up over our head, and then from there, maybe grab a bar, grab a tree branch and just hang, and so it doesn't need to be, I'm on this sweet pull-up program, and I'm getting gains, and I'm doing muscle ups and I'm, getting famous on Instagram. It could literally just be throw a pull-up bar in between any doorway that you pass through regularly. You're changing your visual field. You're changing the shape of your environment. And then it's almost like your arms are lifted up above your head for you. Like if you walk past a pull-up bar in a doorway, 7 out of 10 times, you'll probably just naturally go like, woo, you'll do a little swing through there just because it's there. So you multiply that times a day, a week, a month, a year, that starts to be really meaningful impact. And there's a whole book about this called Shoulder Pain by an orthopedic surgeon called Dr. John Kirsch. And he found that they did a specific study with this. And he found that there was 92 subjects in the study. All of them were potentially going to undergo surgery for shoulder impingement syndrome. And what he found was that 90 out of 92 were able to be completely relieved of any pain and recover full range of motion by simply going through a very basic hanging protocol daily. It was totaled out about 90 seconds in total. I go over this in the hanging chapter in the Align Method book. And then there's just a few other simple exercises. All that stuff we include in there. And it's just like, it's another thing where it's like, it almost is like, oh, like I can't believe that this is the conversation. But a lot of the most simple tools are the most effective. Yeah. And as we get overcomplicated with our approach to things, oftentimes, it's just kind of confusing, and we end up having lots of complex, highly nuanced debates that go nowhere. No one's arguing with it's probably a good idea for you to get your arms up above your head every now and again. No one's arguing that, unless maybe there might be some contention around this, but there's the research that suggests that hand grip is a better indicator for cardiovascular health than blood pressure. So I include that in the book as well. It's like, I don't remember the exact numbers. You can look it up, but every 7-pound increase or decrease in hand grip, it would increase the likelihood by some specific percentage of suffering a heart attack or some type of cardiovascular disease in your life. And it's, sorry for messing. I don't know what the exact statistics are on that, but anybody can just look up that research study and you'll get all the details. And like those basic fundamentals, they're consistent across all cultures, all languages, men, women, any person. And most of us have this really just glaring, low-hanging fruit sitting in front of us, and we're not taking advantage of that. And then we're going for this really, complex protocols. So all I'm saying is, like, first, let's clean up the low-hanging fruit that's just like in your home, in your office, in your travel. And then from there, let's do some of the more complex stuff.
Now, would you say, your main mission and what you've been writing about the most, in your books, is to kind of teach people how to incorporate a lot of these like primal, fundamental type movements that will benefit their body the most, without necessarily having to create this structured workout and programming? And are you more focused on just, here's a few things that you can do to really help your body out right now as it stands in your crazy lifestyle that you have going on?
Yeah, I like structured workouts and programs, but I don't care about them as much if we haven't addressed the fundamental lifestyle conditions. And the reason that I have that perspective is because I worked with clients. My sole work for 12 years before starting, even having a social media handle or starting a podcast or anything like that, was just working with clients to try to help them achieve their fitness goals or relieve pain goals or whatever their physical goals were. And what I found with that was that we would have really we would get great results, and then that back thing or knee thing or shoulder thing that was totally gone for 6 days or 10 days would start to drift back. And I'd say see that pattern happening enough times, or if it's you're on like some yo-yo diet thing or some workout thing, you look jacked and tan for 3 months, everyone's like, oh my God, you're amazing. And then, you see that person again in another 3 months, and you're like, oh my God, what happened? So to me, I'm saying, what's the container that this plan exists in? So then I kind of wound back and said, like, okay, I'm really interested in your container, and that's like, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Bruce Lipton. He's a kind of like pioneered concepts around epigenetics. And he was a cell biologist, or still is a cell biologist. And what he said to me in a podcast I did with him a couple of years ago was that when he was in his lab, if they wanted to create a change in the cells in a petri dish, you don't do anything to the cell. You change the culture that the cell exists within, and then the cell shifts because the cell is an extension or a continuation of the culture that it resides in, and so like culture.
So I had to leave LA.
Oh yeah, I mean, so yeah, I mean, you think about that. That's like we're sensitive to our environment. We're sensitive to the people we're around. We're sensitive to, if you live in a cold. Like I just had a consultation call with someone in Sweden before this, and they are, they were feeling kind of like low energy. and like they know the things to do, but they just don't really like have the motivation to do it. And so we go through and like, well, how much sunlight are you getting in a day? They're like, well, not enough. I work in cryptocurrency. I'm on my computer all day long. I'm in my office. I'm on my chair. Like, I'm like, okay, well, I mean, inadequate exposure to sunlight and vitamin D levels, like that's associated to depression and, you know, like every form of dis-ease you could think of, there's going to be some relationship in there. Well, maybe not everyone, but vitamin D is important for a lot of functions in the body, you know? And so that was like the just blatantly obvious low-hanging fruit. I'm like, what are we even talking about if you're not getting enough sun each day? It's like calling and saying, I have this flower and it's wilting and it just won't grow. Like, and it's in a closet and I don't understand, like, why isn't it growing? It's like, well, do you take it outside at all? You know? And so it's just interesting to me how obvious, not obvious, but how many people know what to do, you know, and a lot of the solutions are quite simple. And if you really get under the hood of a lot of people's lifestyles, it's like, oh my God, there's so much here.
Yeah.
We don't need to add a lot.
I like what you're saying about changing the environment. I remember as a kid, when I was a kid, I did judo, and one of the students there, his family was from Japan. And I remember visiting them and seeing everybody sit on the floor when we ate a meal, and it was old, young, everybody sat on the floor real comfortably. And I remember thinking, that's so uncomfortable. And I asked him about it, and he's like, well, no, it's very comfortable. And I thought, oh, of course, because you do this every single day. Like, this is how you sit down. And we kind of lost